Hey everyone, I'm John Pricea. Thanks for showing up today. I can see most of you. I can't see Heidi or Christina.
Hey,
Yeah.
John.
Heidi, is that you? Who is there? Is that Valerie? Or who am I talking to here?
It is me.
Heidi, good to hear your voice. Well, some of you know me already, but I thought we'd just begin with a few introductions, just in case. I'm John Pricea. I'm a professor of English at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, where I chair the creative nonfiction writing program in our department. I'm a writer of creative nonfiction, memoirs, nature writing, humor writing. I've written, published in journals, magazines, newspapers, a whole bunch of different kinds of venues. So what we're talking about today is not just academic for me, it's my life. And I think we're going to talk about that connection between personal writing and the kind of work it does in our lives and the lives of other people. But I wanted to start with I'd like to get to know some of you. If you could just briefly introduce yourselves, a little bit maybe about why you're here, and it's great to see you all. Let's start maybe with Heidi. I'm just going to go down the list off to the right here.
Well, I'm Heidi Hermanson, and I had I was in a couple of John's classes a million years ago, and they were so great. And I'm just here to get any defenses I can against this pandemic NUI.
That's right. Good to see you, Heidi.
Great to see you.
Kim?
Hi, John. Hello, everyone. I'm Kim Whiteside, and I write just about whatever you can imagine. I have written it. My focus right now is playwriting, and I work at MCC as an instructional designer and also adjunct, and I'm teaching a creative writing class right now, and graduated from UNO with an MFA in creative writing earlier this year. So I am just happy to be here to get some tips and inspiration about how to continue my passion through all of this chaos.
Awesome. So glad you're here, Kim. And Susan.
Turn your speaker off there, John.
Oh, turn my speaker off?
Hi, I'm right behind John, so waving my mask around. I work at Metro, and I write and show it to my family when I need to feel good about myself. Put them on the fridge.
Thank you, Susan. And Todd Stern.
Hi, everybody. Todd Robinson. I teach at UNO in a department not so different from John's. Big fan of his and friend. And yeah, mostly a poet, but I'm always looking for other ways into the maelstrom and anything I can steal from another professor for my own classes. Hello, everybody. Glad you're here.
Awesome, Todd. Glad you're here. Valerie?
Hi, my name is Valerie Russell, and I'm a grant writer by trade, and I'm also writing a steampunk midlife women's fiction fairy tale.
Well, who hasn't? I've written one of those, so I mean, awesome. That's wonderful, Valerie. I'm so glad you're here. Did I miss anybody? I think everyone. Well, thank you for coming out on this cozy winter afternoon. I can tell you, I remember, Scott will remember this, when I was thinking about what to offer today as part of this workshop. It was originally going to be more of a traditional autobiographical workshop where we would talk about writing about home, since that was the theme of the overall festival. But I reached out to Scott and said, it seems like this issue of the pandemic is something that we should be writing about right now. It feels like, that's what nonfiction always has been doing. It's always been trying to articulate some of the most difficult experiences of our lives, not just as individuals, but as a society. And I think sometimes we think that creative nonfiction autobiography is only something you write once you're past something, right? Once you've lived through it and you're looking back on it with critical distance. But I think sometimes when we're all in the midst of these sorts of difficulties, we're looking for those authentic individual voices who are speaking out to our pain, right? Our loss, but also our joy and our hope in the moments of these sorts of struggles, and not waiting years down the line to write about them. So I decided I came up with this kind of on the fly as a possible workshop. And I thought a lot about the writers that I've turned to in those moments when I've been going through some difficult times, people like Virginia Woolf, and writing about her own depression and struggles there. I've thought about James Baldwin a lot this year, also a great author who wrote in the midst of struggle. I think about Lauren Isley, who wrote some of the most beautiful natural science essays that exist, but also was deeply concerned about the condition of the world. I think about David Sedaris and Anne Lamott, some of the great humorists of our time, who also write about bigger social issues. But I think one of the challenges that we face when trying to write about these experiences is this sense of being overwhelmed by emotion. I don't know how many times I've heard people I've talked to, students, colleagues, friends, and asked them to talk about how they're doing, and they say, I just don't have any words. I don't know how to describe this, right? It's not just, it's certainly about loss. I mean, some of them have lost loved ones, disappointment, worry. It's also about the feelings of emotion, of joy, hope, love. Those can be some of the most difficult things to express, I think, even in difficult times, certainly, but also just normally in our lives. So how do you do that? How do you write out of that sense of being overwhelmed by emotion? And this is something I faced myself back in March when this all started to happen. And I kind of instinctively reached for two writers off the shelf to kind of guide me through this. One was Mark Twain, whose humor writing and social satire were something that became a kind of moral conscience for his age. And certainly I've read during difficult times. And I think instinctively I turned to humor. I don't know if you're like this, to try to respond to despair. And that was Mark Twain's theory about humor. He had this phrase this saying that in heaven there will be no laughter because no one needs it up there, right? It's here where we need it. This is where we need the humor. And the other one I turned to instinctively was Montaigne, who's considered kind of the founder of the personal essay form in the Western tradition, writing in the 16th century. And you may know a little bit about him already, but he came from a pretty wealthy family, he was a lawyer, he was involved in politics. But his time was fraught with all sorts of complexity and difficulty, including the plague, religious and political wars all over Europe. And at one point he kind of got fed up and retreated to his family estate to start writing what he called, for the first time really in the Western tradition, essays, which is French to try or to attempt, not to necessarily know or answer. But one thing that in his biography that spoke to me in picking up his work again was that he had also lost a dear friend recently, a guy that he would sit down and have sort of rambling intellectual conversations with about the world and about their lives. And there are some scholars who believe that the essay form was created as a kind of replacement for that conversation that he used to have with his friends. And if you read his short little essays, you can see that aspect to it, right? They're all on something, on friendship, on, body odor, on horses. I mean, it's all these different subject matters, but they're very personal, they're very conversational, they're very rambling. They include a lot of quotes, right, from ancient, literature, but also pop culture at the time. He wrote it in conversational French instead of Latin because it wanted to reach out to as many people as he could. But as I and many other people faced isolation because of the pandemic, I kind of instinctively turned to that form and one particular version of it, the epistolary form, that writing the essay in the form of a letter. there's nothing I think more direct in terms of our, reaching out to someone else in a piece of literature than to write a correspondence, right? Whether it's a letter or an email or whatever. So that in itself felt kind of like, even though I was isolated at the time because of family health issues, it felt like I was reaching out to other people directly through that writing. And it began with a letter. Actually, it was the piece that I read as part of the festival, an imaginary letter to the CEO of Planet Fitness about pizza night, which was the first Monday of every month. And it was about that community of people that I worked out with at that gym, and how much they had meant to me over the years in getting me healthy again. And I watched them get healthy again. And I was worried about, missing them as we moved into this next phase of isolation. And I wanted to write something that paid tribute to that, but also paid tribute in some way to all the communities that we would be missing during the coming months ahead. And so that I wrote in March, and it ended up getting published in a journal called terrain.org, and got a pretty positive response, which made me think maybe there's something to this letter writing kind of nonfiction. And I was silenced for a while, hardly did any writing, even though I was on sabbatical at the time because of everything that was going on, until Orion Magazine, which is a nature environmental magazine out of Massachusetts, came up with a similar writing exercise. They asked pairs of writers who are also friends to take 2 weeks to just write to one another. What's going on in their lives? What's happening? How are you weathering this storm, right? And what's isolation like for you in your life? And the guy I was paired up with was Michael Branch, a good friend of mine for years. He's a writer out of Nevada, nonfiction writer and humorist. Krista Tibbett also participated. You probably know her from On Being, and a number of other writers. And we wrote about everything from, the cathartic relationship we have with our pets. In our case, it was a guinea pig. And in his case, dogs. We wrote about the pros and cons of sourdough. That's how the whole conversation started. Is I told him, I love you like a brother, but if you tell me you're making sourdough, this ends right here, because I was so sick of hearing about people making sourdough. And then he sent me a beautiful loaf of sourdough, and and it went back and forth like that. We talked about being cooped up with kids. We talked about our fears about aging parents. And I knew I would enjoy this, this writing exercise with my friend, but I didn't realize how cathartic it would be for me, and how it would open up new possibilities in my own writing. And in fact, the new book that I'm working on is dominated by epistolary essays written out of this time period. So I think that exercise of writing letters, essays in the form of letters, can open us up to possibilities in our writing, and also create that sense of intimacy with the reader that many of us are missing right now. I think about all my friends who are coming out with books and not able to give readings, not able to go out there. I mean, right here is an example of that, right? We're online instead of in person. So I found that letter form to be a cathartic, writing it to be a kind of cathartic experience. So, so that's kind of the introduction to the reason behind this exercise. And again, it's pretty raw. This is the first time I've ever done it, or tried to do it in this anywhere. So I hope it works. What I'd like you to do, if we could here, and I'm trying to look at the time. All right, good. I'd like us to take 10 minutes to begin an epistolary essay, a letter, written to someone about the pandemic, your experience of it, some aspect of it. I'd like you to picture someone that you would most like to communicate with or most reach out to. It could be someone who is very close to you, a loved one. It could be a friend, or it could be a complete stranger, like in my case, the CEO of Planet Fitness. It could be someone in your present. It could be someone in your past. It could be someone in your future. It could be someone living, someone who has passed on, or someone yet to be born. I talk about this a lot with my students, but I think all Creative nonfiction, personal writing in one way or another is a letter in the bottle to the future. And it's written for people right now and here, but it's also for those who we don't know and will never meet. We'll be looking for some, insight into what we went through here now, but also a sense of connection to gain a little bit of courage and to feel less alone. And I think we can do that across generations as well through art. So I'd like you to picture that person in your life right now. And I would just like you to just start a letter to them. And maybe you'd start with a representative scene or something like letters often do. This happened to me today or last week or last month. And then start to press on the larger meaning, perhaps, of that scene or moment in your life. So if we could do that, we just start that for 10 minutes. Then we'll come back together. I hope we'll all get a chance to read what we've written and share it. And I'll share a little bit too from that Orion exchange as well, if there's time. Does that sound good? Yes? Okay. Okay, we'll come back in about 10 minutes. Hi, everyone. We can just finish that last thought or so. And by the way, Todd asked if this was my house. No, it's not my house. I wish. We're at the Joslyn Castle Carriage House. Beautiful. Okay, well, remember that this is just the beginning, right? Just a start on a possible epistolary essay. And I would just like if someone would like to get us started and would share what they've written. And if you're moved, you could talk a little bit too about how, you know, other areas of your life you're responding to the pandemic as an artist or as a writer as well. So I'd love to, if someone could get us started. Beautiful cat, Valerie. Beautiful cat.
I think Captain Awesome would love to get us started.
Awesome.
Mine was actually based on yesterday morning. Dear Verizon tech support, I do not like your winky face attitude. I believe you are using a winky face to insult me without getting downgraded at work. Your defense of Bitmojis makes me want to blow up your screen with dozens of happy faces. Would you believe I was a happy customer? Would you believe I was sitting blissfully at home in my ergonomic chair with my 2.5 Netflix binging children while my nose properly covered by a socially distanced mask 6 feet away from COVID? And then I went on with my rant.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So where do you think you might go next with this?
Well, I may have to pull out the transcript where I told them I did not like their winky face attitude.
Awesome. You know, it's amazing how, you know, we've relied so much more on our technology, right? That it's almost become a member of the family, right? Disappointing us, also, you know, helping us. I mean, it's a completely different relationship to that world now. So much more urgency to it. So I love that. I love that piece. Well, but Todd, I have you next on my visual. You want to give us?
Yeah, buddy. Here we go. It's a Dear John letter of sorts. Well, never mind. It's not. But it does start, Dear John. Dear John, it snowed last night, just enough to dust the grass and make my hammock soggy. Your sister was snoring all night, so I finally gave up on sleep at 4 and went downstairs to stare at the world, shivering in the fish shirt your dad used to wear. I've been up at odd hours since the pandemic greased the trap doors we all dance upon, sleeping in until 10, dreaming of flying in furnace stacks belching smoke, or roaming the house like a white all hours of the night, slapping at my phone, scratching out some poetry, or just shivering in the dark, my thoughts a cyclotron. You died at the right time, brother, 2 months before the virus landed in American lungs. Cheryl and I had just returned from our little jaunt to the Caribbean when Michelle called, crying, cirrhosis, 44. We had planned to visit you in hospice over spring break, but you didn't even come close. Your sister felt so guilty that she hadn't seen you, that you died alone in yellow, far from any home, your sons estranged. It was a bad way to die, brother, and for that, I'm sorry. But I'll never stop laughing at you in the backyard in Burwell, smashing croquet balls under Sandhill's sun and clouds, or sipping brandy on the back deck, seeing how many constellations we could name. That was long ago, though. Back here in the present, we lay low. You can't see many stars in the city, and we're too skittish to head out of town, so we stay inside, or I walk alone, head down through the maelstrom. Cheryl only leaves the house for doctor's appointments. I can't even get her as far as the sidewalk.
That was beautiful, Todd. And I meant to do this with Valerie's piece too. I'd like to invite other comments and responses to the work that's being shared here.
I think Head Down Through the Maelstrom would be a great title for your next book. Todd.
I agree.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, that piece captures so much of the feeling of, I mean, there's humor there, but and warmth, but there's also deep loss that I'm invited into through the personal memories that you have of your friend. I mean, you're not just telling us about the loss, but you're telling us about the relationship. And I think that's one of the things that a letter can do, invite us into. I mean, that's how it's been for me too. It's not just speaking to the contemporary event, but also drawing us into the past, into those memories that create the context of that grief and invite readers into that experience. And I think you did it beautifully there, Todd. It was wonderful to hear your voice, hear you reading it. Again, I've read your work on Facebook and your updates. If you haven't seen his updates on his experience with COVID, you should, because they're inspirational and moving and beautifully written. So, and here's another one that you just created right in front of us. Gorgeous, man. Heidi, do you want to?
Sure.
Awesome.
Dear David, we should have stuck together, but I understand the lure of California. The air out here is clear, and I've renewed my childhood love of bicycle riding. I visit cemeteries with my camera and make up stories about the people there, although the kids make me sad. My nephew Will made me laugh when I talked about social distancing in cemeteries. He said, everyone there is at least 6 feet away.
Oh man, Heidi. Responses?
Hi, it's Bo. I'm driving home and
Hello.
listening. I love Heidi.
Bo.
You always have this way of just capturing such a visceral emotion and moment in such brevity. You guys are just making me tear up.
I'm honored, Bo. Thank you.
You know, Heidi, when you were reading that, it's I haven't written about this yet, but you've inspired me to do this at some point. Since this whole thing started back last spring, you know, I had to give up my Planet Fitness membership, and I began to walk every day. And I try to walk about anywhere from 5 to 6 miles or so. And the place I walk is the cemetery that's right next to our house. And I keep thinking that I'm going to branch out and walk somewhere else, you know, walk in the town or through a park. But I feel this weird loyalty to that place and to the dead in some way. I don't know how to explain it, Heidi. I mean, what is it about that place, right, that draws us? It's comforting in a way to be among them. I don't know how I'm going to articulate it, but you've inspired me to try at least.
It's comforting, it's quiet, and it's full of stories.
It's full of stories, right? Yeah. And Scott just asked if that's where the Black Angel is. No, it's the cemetery just across from there. It's the memorial cemetery right near our house. So all the tombstones are flat, so you can't really see them. It's not like, it doesn't have this kind of claustrophobia, right, that you sometimes feel in cemeteries. There's an openness there, and it's hilly and offers amazing views of the surrounding city and countryside, which I crave. And add into that the larger view of mortality that kind of place provides. I mean, I refuse to walk anywhere else. So you captured it beautifully, Heidi.
Thank you.
Kim.
I wrote a letter to my grandson, and I did start writing letters to him, and then the pandemic hit and I stopped. So I think this will get me back into it.
Awesome.
Dear Xavier, when we last spoke, you said you were well and taking all precautions. I hope your mom and others you like and love are faring well in these challenging times. I'm managing to take things day by day. I spend most of my time in my apartment, hunkered down and away from the microscopic organisms that might kill me. I've decided to downsize my life. Being with all my stuff 24/7 is the biggest wake-up call on the fact that I don't need all of this. Will you come by? I invite you to take anything you like. The pandemic, raging fires, political debauchery, tropical storms, civil unrest, and unprecedented death toll have helped me to see quite clearly what is important. It is not all of these things I've collected, grandson. It is you. I pray that you walk through this radical time with stories to tell your grandchildren. I pray you survive this with ideas on how people can be better toward one another. And I hope you use this time to build wings. So if a strange, unorthodox, downright crazy time such as this occurs again, you have everything you need to rise above it. I can help you with the gossamer part.
Oh my God, no, I'm tearing up. Oh my gosh. That was beautiful. Anyone want to respond?
That reminds me, Miss Kim, of we mentioned in the earlier workshop about, letters that you find from 100 and 200 years ago, and they are the guidelines to what life was really like, not the newspapers and the media, but what people were really living through. And that letter feels like it could be put in a time capsule and really encapsulate what it's like to live in 2020 right now. It's beautiful.
I couldn't agree more. Kim, the other thing I think you captured for me is this sense of the way this pandemic has deepened and enriched the relationship between the generations. And I don't think I've ever felt, I mean, I'm a parent. I also have parents who are in their 80s and vulnerable. And I've certainly felt, a strong connection to both through the years, but this pandemic has added a degree of urgency and depth to that I have never experienced before. And I wrote about it a little bit in the piece that I shared this week, that sense of deep love for the next generation and questions, concerns about what we're leaving them, what we're leaving behind. And that just doesn't, not just resources, but in terms of our voices and visions, right? This is the time that those things should be written down in hopes that it might be picked up later on and provide some courage and connection, even after maybe we're gone. That was beautifully done, Kim.
Thank you.
Okay, Susan, it's right behind me. You want to share? What's that? You didn't? I thought you were. Oh, okay. All right, shall we? I wasn't. All right. Okay. Is there anyone I had missed that had written and wanted to share? Well, I don't know about you, but I was very deeply moved by all of them. And you've given me the courage to keep up with this exercise, not just as a teacher in my classes, but also as a writer. It's affirmed that what it brought out in me, the kind of intense emotions and feelings and urgency in my writing, I felt it in your writing too. And so thank you for that. Thank you for the gift of that today. And I hope you will continue with this, not just only with the individual letter that you've started here, but I hope that you'll continue to maybe do a series of letters as well to various people you want to reach out during these times. I know it's helped alleviate some of my sense of isolation and loneliness. So thank you for that.
The Orion link is in the chat.
What's that?
The Orion link is in the chat.
Oh, good. The Orion, Scott said the Orion link is in the chat. I would encourage you to take a look at that. It's called Together Apart series where they paired up the writers. I think it might provide some interesting inspiration for you as you look for subjects as well. Scott, do we have a minute here for me to read something here at the end or no? Okay. I just wanted to share with you a section of that from that series of exchanges between my friend Michael and I, and then we'll part ways. This is from me to Mike. That I've enjoyed hearing about your new pup Huckleberry. I think what we said about people experiencing a renewed need for connection with wildness is also happening with our domestic animal companions. I'm glad we had the cat appearance here, Valerie. This is perfect timing. I've noticed a lot more pictures and updates about pets on social media, as I think people have increasingly relied on them for emotional support. Around here, the creature has risen to surprising dominance. That way is our guinea pig. This is the rodent I mentioned earlier. Alden originally named him Winter after he got him from Santa this Christmas. But then we watched a fascinating documentary on the species, which is native to the Andean regions of South America. Locals enjoy them as pets and as food, but also use them in healing ceremonies. According to some beliefs, they have the power to absorb the pain and sickness of others. Afterwards, Alden decided that out of respect, Winter should have a Spanish name. Thus, the legend of El W, the W, began. Since the pandemic hit, this domestic cavy has elevated himself into an awe-inspiring mix of therapy pet and demigod. Everyone wants to hold him, feed him, love him, worship him. Especially Steph, my wife. She tutors at-risk kids at the local community college, and when they went online, she got in the habit of letting him perch on her shoulder during Zoom sessions. On the rare occasion when she forgets, her students ask if he's okay. Where is El W? Steph's health risks, plus the distance from her elderly parents, understandably leave her a little strung out with worry sometimes, like so many. When that happens, she asks one of us to bring her El W for cuddle time. It drives the dog crazy from jealousy, and the boys and I can sort of relate. But I'll be damned if that creature doesn't have some kind of weird power. Sometimes when I'm sitting there watching the news, replaying the latest horrors in my mind, I look over at him nestled in someone's lap, and he'll be staring right at me, right through me, as if to say, oh yes, my friends, bring to me all your troubles. Let O W take away the sickness. And for a minute or two, he kind of does. Not unlike our friendship, Mike. I hope you know how much I value it. I've been trying to say that more to my friends and family. So many offerings of gratitude to lay at the feet of El W. I shall do so again tonight for you and your loved ones. I'll send a picture of him for display that he might bless your household. Someday soon, I hope we will be able to lift a few drams together, toast life and the blessed earth, and break bread, even if it is homemade sourdough. I extend that same those same feelings to you. I hope we have a chance to meet in person at some point and talk about this time in the rearview mirror and connect personally. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing a little bit of your life with us in this workshop. I hope it was helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, buddies. Keep scribbling.
Try.
Thank you.
You too.